Any effort that you make towards weight loss is a good thing. You're going to try all kinds of stuff to reach your goal. You'll work out, change the way you eat. You might even start going to saunas to shed some extra weight. And all of these things can work, but each of these things can also fail if you don't have a good understanding of how to manage setbacks. And more importantly, a good understanding of why setbacks happen. Now I want to start this off with a little story because something happened last week. During the stream last week, I made 2 mistakes. One was very obvious and one was like a little bit less obvious. So I'll tell you about the one that was less obvious first. This mouse, it's chargeable and I was still plugged in when I started the stream. I didn't realize. And so I couldn't move it around. So I tried to unplug it and totally messed up my slides and my everything. It was just like everything was all over the place. And so I'm talking to you guys and I'm trying to fix my slides at the same time and like find my place on my outline. So did you notice? I didn't have anyone complaining, but okay. The second mistake that I made, because I went then to go to my slide, and when I went to my slide, I scrolled forward. No, I didn't just play slide 1, I played a few slides. These 2 mistakes happened within the first minute of starting the stream. Now, I've had other live streams where I've made mistakes. For example, starting my live stream and there's no audio and you can't hear what I'm saying. And I've also had times where I started live streams or been in the middle of a live stream actually, and someone knocks on the door to deliver a package. I've even had scenarios where I start my live and things are kind of going crazy and I realize my internet's not working and you're getting like spotty views and I have to restart the whole thing, create a brand new live stream just to get back on. And I sincerely believe that on those occasions, I probably streamed a good half an hour later than I said I was going to start. And each of the times, you guys stuck with me. I found a way to correct the problem, and you guys were right there with me. And, well, okay, some of them were very obvious, but some of them didn't even seem to matter to you guys, and there was no comment at all. These were issues that I could not have predicted. Right? I had to think on the spot, how am I solving this? One thing that I want to share with you is that after experiencing the same problem repeatedly, so the scrolling forward through my slides, despite the fact that no one complains about it, I was looking for a solution because it was something that was bothering me. And that's when I was having a conversation in the Wellness Squad, wellnesssquad.org, you should check it out. And I got called out on this idea that my streams do not need to be perfect. I don't need to be so hard on myself. The fact that I know that by the time I was having this conversation in the squad and I was kind of using it as maybe a way to motivate people, I was talking about what happened to me. But at the moment when I was having that conversation, I wasn't bothered by it anymore. I really had to stop and check with myself. In the moment when it was happening, was I embarrassed? Or was I feeling like my streams needed to be perfect? Or was it just something that I'm looking for a solution for because it bothers me? And what I realized is that, yes, in the moment, on the spot, when it was happening, I was operating out of fear. So yes, I was being a little bit, I guess, perfectionistic because in this world of YouTube and online and trying to get your message out and trying to help as many people as I'm trying to help, I know that if I mess up the beginning of my video, it doesn't get as much reach. And I had just messed it up. And so, of course, there's a part of me that's thinking, oh no, right? But setbacks are normal. And even though I've messed up videos before, you guys come back. Why I'm talking about this today is because setbacks are normal. And that means they're going to happen in dieting too. And a setback doesn't have to be a failure. We can see the setback and then see it as an opportunity for growth. But in order to do that, we need to see that the setback is a setback. So I hadn't let myself take the 5 seconds to realize that, yes, when these things are happening, I'm kind of freaking out because I want to help as many people as I possibly can, and this is going to mess with my plans. And so I appreciate being told that, yes, Violet, look what you're doing, because I still solved the problem, right? And that was what the point of what I said to the community, but it also allowed me to see that that's part of the reason, and I want to share that with you. That's part of the reason that I'm able to solve problems for my health as well. Because as much as in the moment it bothered me, and maybe I was being a little bit perfectionistic because I know how things go wrong when the beginning of the video doesn't work well, I took that feeling and channeled it into solve this problem, Violet. Don't let it keep happening to you, because it's actually frustrating when it happens to you, and then you're freaking out, and then does your stream really go well? So what are the things that could be setbacks in the diet world that cause us to then not live the rest of our day well? And as I was thinking about this, I realized that there's a wide spectrum that can be happening here. Because it could be something like thinking about eating the wrong food, or going out to buy the wrong food, or going like that. Those thoughts that come to us and they kind of torment us because I want the chocolate bar or the cookies or the whatever. It could be eating the chocolate bar or the cookie or the whatever. Or it could be as far as I've regained 10, 15, 20 pounds. Maybe I've regained all the weight. I need us to understand that each one of those things are setbacks, just on a spectrum from mild to, oh no. By understanding that, then we can actually realize that I don't need to wait till the weight is resumed to start working on growing from these setbacks. So if I talk about myself, when I'm thinking about buying nuts, I'm in the middle of a setback, right? Because I know what happens when I buy nuts. First of all, I never buy a serving, because you can't really just walk into the store and buy a serving. And even single serving packages are not a serving. So it would not be possible for me to buy a serving. But then once I start eating cashews, well, they just go down. And now maybe I'm eating 2 servings or 3 servings or 4 servings. So because remember, a serving is about 30 grams, if I remember correctly. It's not a lot of nuts. If I don't let myself see that I'm in the middle of something when that's happening to me, I'm not going to take the time to even check, what was I thinking about? What was it that I was thinking, or what was it that I was doing, or what was it that I was feeling before I had the thought, I want to go get some nuts? Because the truth is that self-soothing behavior that I do, because I'm not eating nuts because, and this is what's tricky ones for you. I'm not eating nuts because I like nuts. Because I don't like nuts more than I like feeling good. So that's another part of the problem that we live, is that we have this idea that when I think I want nuts, it's equivalent to I just wanted nuts. No. Because I know when I eat nuts, I'm going to go out of control. You know, when you eat cookies or cake or chocolate or whatever, you're going to get out of control. So the fact that you're even thinking about eating those things tells you something's wrong. You know, if someone's constantly craving a drink, right? We don't just say, oh, they just love bourbon or they just love beer. No, if they're constantly craving a drink, especially if they're constantly craving it after a hard day at work, or after a fight with their spouse, or their kids aren't listening, or whatever the problem, if that's when you find yourself craving a drink, then we start to look at you and say, hey, come on, maybe there's something else going on. Because drinking all the time isn't good for your health, and neither is eating junk food. Okay, what do we consider all the time? I think that we would all agree that somebody who is drinking every single day has a problem. Okay, I think we would all agree that someone who's drinking every other day probably still has a problem. Okay, But I would even give you that if I have a person who, even if they're drinking once a week, but they feel compelled to have that drink, we would still say, well, yeah, of course, if you're drinking once a week because you feel like you have to, yeah, you still have a problem. Wellness warrior, how many of us fall into that story when it comes to junk food? That we might be able to do good during the week because we're busy and we're active and we're doing stuff and we're around people. But then the weekend comes and we can't do it, right? We have to have something. Here's the problem. In our society, we tell ourselves a story that we're supposed to relax on the weekend. We're supposed to have treats on the weekend. We're supposed to we don't have to stick to our diet on the weekend. This is the story that we're told. And because we all live in this world with the same stories floating around us, we end up doing it. When I realized that I was more likely to want nuts when I had a hard day at work or frustrating interaction with the kids or my spouse, or I was able to realize that it was the way that I was self-soothing. And we, again, live in this world that makes us believe that self-soothing is actually the way to go. And I'm not saying that we're not supposed to take care of ourselves. Let's be careful. I want to make sure I say this properly. I'm not saying that. When I'm taking care of myself, it's about I want to feel good about being me. But when I'm self-soothing with insert whatever vice you have, it's about there's something happening in the world that I should be addressing, but instead of addressing it, I'm eating this thing or drinking this thing or doing this action or whatever and it's not actually changing the situation at hand. Why is that a problem? Well, because after I finish eating the nuts, the problem's still there. I start feeling bad again. Well, what options do I have? Well, I'll eat some more nuts. Or maybe I'll video game. Or maybe I'll drink some. But is it changing the fact that the problem's still there? Not at all. Distracting myself isn't the answer. I need us to also see that sometimes we think that if I didn't gain weight, it doesn't matter. So I ate some nuts. I didn't put on weight. It's okay. Is it reality that because I didn't gain weight, that nothing else is happening internally with me? And again, if I'm eating cookies or ice cream or whatever, but I'm a good weight, that doesn't necessarily mean that those cookies or ice creams or whatever aren't harming me internally, which we know. If I'm allowing myself to think about something as a way to not engage the other thing, I'm still not advancing my life. Ultimately, if I want my life to be happy all round, my happiness is not only going to come from food. It's not only going to come from video games. It's not only going to come from whatever vice I have. And usually we have more than one, by the way. Can I just point that out? I'm saying this out loud because I think sometimes what happens is that we don't realize that because we have more than one vice and we can kind of shift things around, that when it gets back to food and we say, oh, it doesn't really matter, and we engage with it, and we are then stuck in a situation for maybe days, maybe weeks, or maybe we don't even go back to eating healthy, that yes, that all has an impact, because it's not just impacting the fact that I didn't solve the problem. Now it's impacting how do I feel about my ability to do what's better for me. And if I don't believe in myself that I can actually do what's better for me, then I really won't even try to solve the problem. So I end up eating the stuff that's hurting me and falsely believing that I cannot solve this problem that I absolutely could be solving. Now, will I solve it perfectly first shot? Probably not. Will I solve it easily? Probably not. But are most things that are happening in our life solvable? Absolutely. Most things are. Do we always like the solution? No, not all the time. Sometimes we hate the solution. Sometimes we detest the solution. If I don't get my health under control, and then 5 years from now, I have a heart attack, and the only way to keep me alive is a surgery, the chances are I'm going to hate that answer, but it would be the answer. And I think this is part of the reason that we are also in trouble, because we are very good at distracting ourselves from problems, because again, that's what we've been taught. Don't worry about it. Don't pay attention to it. It's not a big deal. That bothers you? Why do you focus on that? These are all things that we hear a lot. We focus on things that bother us because they bother us. And what we should do is find a way to make them less bothersome. Now, if I do that, then things run more smoothly. You're probably thinking that I solved the slides issue by just not having slides today. That actually isn't what it was. I did solve the slide issue by creating a new setup that would allow me to do my slides properly, which I can't test today because I don't have any slides. But I'm saying that out loud right now because the truth is, we rarely eat the wrong food because we are feeling that we want that food. Because we know that the wrong food, by this stage of the game, we know, is causing our weight to go up, our inflammation, our pain, and all the health problems that we have. By this stage in the game, we know that. If I have weight to lose, I cannot lie to myself and say that eating cookies is helping me lose weight, right? Like, I know that. I'm eating the cookies because somehow something in my day didn't go right, and I'm upset about it, and I'm using the cookies to self-soothe and to distract myself from that thing that didn't go well. And I will have to do that 15 more times today if that's the way that I'm managing this situation. However, if I could actually, when I even think about getting cookies, which is the beginning of the setback, right? That's setback number 1. But if I can pay attention to the fact that, oh my gosh, I just thought about getting nuts. What's going on? Then I would very likely be able, because I didn't go get the nuts, sit in my feelings and see that, oh, that thing that just happened bothered me, or even, oh, that thing from this morning is still bothering me, or even that thing from yesterday is still bothering me, because yes, sometimes the problem didn't happen right now, and I'm still upset about it, and I'm distracting myself with food and making myself feel better because the food tastes good. And honestly, I'm not going to say that you don't feel better, because you do. In that moment, you feel better. It tastes good. It's setting off dopamine. It's setting off serotonin. It's setting off feelings that actually make you physically have less pain. There's a lot of stuff happening when we eat garbage. But the flip side of the coin is, once that sugar is in me, then I'm feeling inflammation issues, and that's my story. My weight's rising because no matter who you are, if you overeat sugar, some of it's getting stored as fat. It might not be enough to show on the scale in a month or a year, but in a few years, at some point, weight is rising. Each person is going to live the story a little differently, but always towards the same negative outcome, which is, I haven't solved the thing in my real world that was causing me to do this bad behavior, number 1, and number 2, ruining my health. Distracting yourself is never the answer. Magical cures that come from us believing that if you just eat this, then you can erase the effects of having eaten that. I've heard that story so many times. Oh, if you eat carbs alongside, if I've eaten carbs, I've eaten carbs. Eating it alongside X, Y, or Z is not going to erase the fact that I've eaten carbs. I want us to be realistic with ourselves, because we have this magical thinking that happens that says that, oh, I can eat this stuff and then I can exercise. And no, I still ate it. And the negative impact it has on my body, getting fat stored in fat storage, harming my arteries, and causing inflammation and causing all kinds, setting off cortisol, which causing me to have emotional problems. Not every problem looks the same for every person. And we need to really look at, how do I feel when I do well and I eat properly and I sleep enough and I get the right amount of exercise and I do all the things that are positive for my body, versus how do I feel when I let myself overeat, not sleep enough, and do all the outcome for you will be like visible, and it will be felt, and we need to learn to actually pay attention. When I'm telling myself, or when society is telling me, when I'm telling myself, because it's both of them, that I shouldn't be bothered by this, that I shouldn't be worrying about this, that I can just push it aside and move forward because that's what everybody else does. What do I do about my feelings? This is hard. This topic is coming up because I watched a video and they were talking about perfectionism, and so many people are in the world talking about perfectionism in this way that makes it seem like, first of all, it's some kind of catalyst to doing better in life, or that it's this thing that only causes us to fail because we don't know how to manage it better. When in fact, when I'm trying to do something perfectly, when I'm trying to avoid setbacks, when I'm trying to not deal with what's in front of me, it's because there's real problems in my life that I don't know how to manage. It's because I don't think that I can solve a problem. And perfectionism shows itself because, and we only look at the one side of the coin when we talk about perfectionism, because there's two sides of the coin. Whenever I talk to someone who's perfectionistic, it's not just everything needs to be perfect and that all the time. That's not what's happening. It's, if it's not perfect, I'm not doing it. That's what's happening. If it's not perfect, it's not worthy. I don't put it out into the world. If it's not perfect, why am I even going to start? And how many of us have lived that? If I don't have the perfect meal plan for the whole week, then what's the point of me eating keto? If I don't have the perfect workout routine, what's the point of me going to the gym? I need to know exactly what you eat, Violet. I hear that all the time. Why? You're not going to like what I eat. Okay, anyways, I'm getting off topic. Here we go again. So what do I do with my feelings? Right? I'm trying to get you to understand that even if I make myself feel better, if the problem is still there, I haven't changed anything, I will feel bad eventually. Because what I need to do is address whatever problem. If it's a person that I need to talk to because maybe we are not getting along, then I go talk to that person. If it's a situation at work that needs to change because it's making my work life harder, then I need to go into work and talk to my manager or my boss or my whoever and get it to be changed. Right? We need to learn to stand up for ourselves and understand that if I'm going to change my life, if I want my life to be happy, I need to change things. And we need to understand that eating the garbage food is not doing anything towards solving the actual problem that we need to change, that we want to change, that would be great if it changed that, right? But when we change things, when we actually change things, that's when we will notice that pull towards eating the garbage isn't there. That pull towards everything being perfect isn't there because it wasn't real. It wasn't really about it being perfect. It was about controlling something when I feel like I don't have control of that thing. But that's, again, magical thinking. If I control this, I'm going to feel better. Well, that doesn't change the fact that that thing is still happening, Wellness Warrior. The truth is, you want to feel good. As do I. You want to solve problems. As do I. But sometimes the solutions are not obvious. What does that mean? That means that it's not that I can just say, snap my fingers, that's the answer. Sometimes I have to think on it. Sometimes I have to work on it. Sometimes I will try 17 things before I get to the answer that's going to make sense. And are we doing that? We live in a society that is teaching us to avoid painful situations at all costs. And we're taught to just shut down the feelings. Just don't think about it. Don't feel it. I need you to understand that you live in here, right? You live in here. You live in here. You are going to feel it. You are going to remember it. You are going to struggle with that situation, whether or not you're touching it right now. That's why something could have happened 3 days ago, and it's causing me to eat nuts today. Because that thing from 3 days ago still bugging me, and I'm eating nuts today. And if I don't stop and think about why am I chasing right now, I'm not going to figure it out. I'm not saying that the initial time that I ate nuts was because of a problem. I'm not saying that. Because I used to think that nuts were healthy and not a problem for me, right? For some people, they're not a problem. For me, they are, because I end up overeating them. And that's the problem we're talking about today. We're talking about the fact that if I don't understand that there's problems in my world that push me towards these setbacks, then I don't change this. Because the only way to change this is to realize that the setback isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening because I'm living my life and something is going wrong that I didn't put my finger on, so then I didn't solve it. Now my self-soothing needs to happen because I don't feel good. It's not always obvious, wellness warrior. But the problem is that we live in this world that says shut down those feelings as fast as possible. Make yourself feel better. Have a smile on all the time, because heaven forbid that somebody knows that you're upset. And if you're a man, oh my goodness, you better not cry. Heaven forbid that somebody see you cry. And then we push the whole event aside, right? We don't even take the time to notice, because heaven forbid somebody see me upset. And yes, I had to acknowledge to myself that last week during the stream, I did that. So after how many years of knowing that that's not the answer, in the stream, I did that. So if we don't allow ourselves to step back and look at when are these things happening, we can't fix them, right? I'm very appreciative that Sing It called me out and said, hey, look what you're doing. Very appreciative. Because it got me to step back and say, you know what? The truth is, in the moment, I was freaking out. And now I can solve that. Because it's one video. If one video doesn't do well, whatever, right? And that's the truth. It's not about the one video. It's about the message that I'm trying to give. And the people that care to hear the message are not going to mind that I screwed up at the beginning of the video, right? And the people that don't care to hear the message, the people that don't know me yet, maybe they have the opportunity to see another one of my videos where it went more smoothly. But I needed to pause and let myself think about the fact that that's the truth, right? That I was freaking out, and that in the future, I'm going to try my best that if I make a mistake, not to freak out about it, because it doesn't help me to solve the problem. It actually makes solving the problem worse. Because as I was sitting there fiddling with this and then trying to get back to where I was on the screen, was I speaking the way that I normally would speak? No, right? When I rewatched it, I could see that I wasn't speaking like me. And that bugs me more, right? It would have been great if I would have just said, I messed that up. Okay, Give me a second while I get back myself on track. That would have been great. It would have made the transition back to talking easier. Instead of it sounding like rushed and hurried because, right? And so I realized by looking at what she told me about, I realized that I wasn't allowing myself to make a mistake because I'm so focused on getting this message out. But I easily could have just asked you guys to bear with me because what I'm talking about is really important. And I want to give you this message and I want to give it to you clearly. So let me get myself back on track before I keep talking. I could have said that, right? And I just thought of that right now. Again, a lot of the times the things we need to solve are going to happen in a moment where we didn't know we were going to need to solve it. Somebody is going to walk up to you when you weren't expecting it and offer you cookies because it's so-and-so's birthday today and we're all having cookies. That's not in the plan, right? Do I feel different from everybody if I say no? Some of us would. And then it causes us to not want to be embarrassed. And so, I say yes to the cookie. And there's all this stuff that happens. And it's like, do I realize and I step back from a situation and say, my fear of being different just caused me to eat something that I know is off plan? Or it could even be more sneaky, the way our society works. Yay, somebody offered me cookies. Here's my excuse to eat off plan, right? Because we all get treats once in a while, right? It's normal to step off your diet once. Do we see where if we don't really know what we want for ourselves, then we can be hijacked and there can be setbacks that they're not me doing the wrong thing. They're me making mistakes because the setback is happening. I'm thinking about it. That's the step one of the setback. I'm thinking about doing this thing that I know isn't good for me. And the world around me isn't helping me to think clearly, right? It's actually cluttering my thoughts. And then we end up self-soothing with food over and over and over again. We end up not solving our lives' problems. We end up being hurt by the fact that we didn't solve the problem, hurt by the weight that we're gaining. And whenever we feel hurt, we want to self-soothe. And so we're in this vicious cycle. And there is a solution. The solution starts, though, before food, because the solution isn't about food or video games or alcohol or whatever the self-soothe thing is that you do. The solution is not about that. The solution is believing in myself. So, Wellness Warrior, I want you to believe in yourself that you're strong enough to face any challenge that happens in your life. And then I want you to also believe that you're strong enough, smart enough, clear enough, focused enough to solve. And this isn't easy because you're going to be afraid and emotional. Right? Afraid to make a mistake, afraid to look like a fool, afraid that people are going to know that you failed, afraid. You're going to be emotional because problems by definition are problems because they hurt us. They upset us in some way. And if the issue that you're trying to solve involves another person, that's another level of problem, right? Because the solution you put forward, they might not agree with. And now we're going back and forth. And am I comfortable in confrontation situations? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Chances are, if you're having this issue, you're not. There are so many layers to this, but it all starts with you having some belief in yourself that you can solve. Because the other person, if there is another person involved, is not going to solve for you, right? They're solving for themselves. You need to learn how to negotiate and potentially even push for the solution that works for you. Recently, in my office building, they sent me a renewal with an insanely high percentage added to my rent. And I had an option. I could have just got angry and cried and eaten something and paid it. Or what I did after getting angry was I got up and I went down to see them. and we had a chat. You can imagine that I was really stressed about going down and having that chat because, I mean, it's not like I don't know that the price of things have gone up, but the amount that they were putting, it was not computing for me. And after about a 45-minute conversation, we settled on a number that made me feel more comfortable. I focused on solving the problem. And with the new solution, I was able to go back and go back to work, right? Versus being stressed. Sometimes we don't realize that that is not just the best option. It's the only option if the goal you have for yourself is to be able to move on with your day and feel comfortable about what that solution was. Because if I don't do that, then what I'm doing is I'm moving on with my day, hating the solution that I left there. Because if you don't do anything about it, Wellness Warrior, then that's the solution. And I need you to understand that. If I don't do anything about the problem that's in front of me, if I just swallow it every time, then what I'm actually doing is saying that's the solution that I'm leaving there. Have you ever been in a situation where you just walked away and let it be? That's the solution that's going to happen? Have there been any of you that saw that and said, nope, I know that's going to make me want to eat or drink or whatever, and you said, no, I have to solve it. I'm on this? Let me know that too. I'd love to know. The answer isn't indulging your cravings. So this message is really important. So I'm actually going to ask a favor that I don't usually ask, but I want you to like the video. All right? Before you go to the next video, which is linked in the description, I want you to like the video because I need more people to understand this, because it drives me crazy when I see this topic being discussed in a way that doesn't allow us to actually change what's happening. The answer is solve the original problem.